When 17-year-old Tyler Chen walked into Riverside Falls High with his signature messy black hair that defied gravity, he had no idea that within hours, Brandon Walsh and his crew would attempt to cement him to the cafeteria ceiling using industrial-strength bubble gum. What they didn't know was that Tyler wasn't just any new kid. He was someone who had spent years mastering the art of unsticking the impossible, dissolving the permanent, and turning sticky disasters into perfect solutions. Their prank was about to backfire in ways that would leave the entire school talking for months. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Tyler's alarm buzzed at 6:30 sharp on a Tuesday morning in late September, the Colorado mountain air carrying the crisp promise of autumn through his bedroom window. He rolled out of bed and immediately began his morning ritual, running. His fingers through his thick, unruly hair that stuck up in 12 different directions, no matter what he tried. His younger sister Emma always joked that his hair looked like he'd been struck by lightning, and honestly, Tyler had given up trying to tame it years ago. It had become his trademark, something that made him memorable even when he tried to blend into the background. The Chen family had moved to Riverside Falls 3 weeks ago when their father, David, landed a maintenance supervisor position at the local industrial complex. Their small apartment above Murphy's repair shop downtown wasn't much, but it was home, and Tyler had already begun helping his dad with various projects around town. David Chen was the kind of man who could fix anything that was broken, unstick anything that was stuck, and solve problems that stumped everyone else. Tyler had inherited that gift, though he rarely talked about it. Growing up in Portland, Tyler had spent countless hours in his father's workshop, learning the chemistry behind different adhesives, the molecular structure of various solvents, and the physics of how things stick together and come apart. While other kids played video games, Tyler experimented with removing impossible stains, separating fused materials, and understanding why certain substances bonded the way they did. His notebooks were filled with formulas for dissolving everything, from superglue to tree sap, and his bedroom closet contained a carefully organized collection of specialized tools and solutions that most adults had never heard of. What started as curiosity had evolved into genuine expertise. Tyler could remove gum from hair without scissors, separate pages that had been glued together for decades, and clean surfaces that others had declared permanently stained. His friends back in Portland used to call him whenever they faced impossible messes, and Tyler never failed to find a solution. It wasn't magic. It was science, patience, and an understanding of how materials behaved at the molecular level. Now standing in front of the mirror in his new bathroom, Tyler attempted once again to flatten his rebellious hair. The thick black strands seemed to have a mind of their own, refusing every product he'd tried. His mother used to say it was because his hair was too healthy, too strong to be weighed down by ordinary styling products. Emma always teased that it was because his brain was so active that it created static electricity. Whatever the reason, Tyler had learned to embrace it as part of who he was. Riverside Falls High School loomed before him like a fortress of red brick and tall windows, its sprawling campus nestled against the backdrop of snow-capped mountains. Students streamed through the main entrance, their voices echoing off the high ceilings of the central hallway. Tyler adjusted his backpack, which contained not just his textbooks and school supplies, but also a small emergency kit he'd assembled over the years. Most students carried pencils and calculators. Tyler carried specialized cleaning wipes, a tiny bottle of citrus-based solvent, and a few other items that had saved him from sticky situations more times than he could count. The hallways buzzed with the typical energy of a Tuesday morning. Groups of students clustered around lockers, sharing weekend stories and complaining about upcoming tests. Tyler walked quietly, observing the social dynamics he was still learning to navigate. In Portland, he'd had his established friend group, and his reputation as the guy who could solve any mess. Here, he was just another new face trying to find his place in an ecosystem that had been established long before his arrival. His first period chemistry class with Mrs. Rodriguez had become his favorite part of each day. She was young for a teacher, maybe early 30s, with an infectious enthusiasm for science that reminded Tyler of his father's approach to problem solving. When she demonstrated molecular bonds and discussed the properties of different compounds, Tyler found himself genuinely engaged, often asking questions that impressed her and surprised his classmates. Yesterday, when she'd explained polymers and their adhesive properties, Tyler had shared an insight about cross-linking that made her pause and look at him with new interest. Between classes, Tyler had begun to notice the school's social hierarchy. At the top sat Brandon Walsh, a senior who seemed to command attention wherever he went. Brandon was everything Tyler wasn't: tall, athletic, perfectly groomed, and effortlessly popular. His girlfriend Jessica Rivera held court at the popular table during lunch, her perfectly styled blonde hair and designer clothes marking her as someone who set trends rather than followed them. Connor Hayes, Brandon's best friend, was the class clown type who could make people laugh but often at someone else's expense. Madison Price hovered around the edges of their group, clearly desperate to belong, but never quite secure in her position. Tyler had managed to avoid their attention for his first few weeks, keeping his head down and focusing on his studies. He'd even started to build a tentative friendship with Zoe Parker, a quiet girl in his English class who shared his love of science fiction novels. Zoe had warned him about Brandon's crew, mentioning that they had a reputation for targeting students who stood out in any way. Tyler's distinctive hair definitely made him stand out, but he'd hoped that flying under the radar would be enough to avoid trouble. During lunch on Monday, he'd overheard Connor making jokes about new students and their need to learn how things worked at Riverside Falls High. The comment had been general, not directed at anyone specific, but something in Connor's tone had made Tyler pay closer attention to the group's dynamics. They seemed to operate on a system of establishing dominance through public humiliation, targeting students who couldn't or wouldn't fight back effectively. As Tyler made his way to his locker after second period, he had no idea that Brandon had already noticed him, already identified him as a potential target, and was already planning something that would test every skill Tyler had learned in his father's workshop. The morning felt normal, routine even, but beneath the surface, forces were aligning that would transform Tyler from an invisible new student into someone the entire school would remember. The cafeteria at Riverside Falls High operated like a carefully choreographed social theater, where every table represented a different level of the school's invisible hierarchy. Brandon Walsh surveyed his domain from the prime real estate near the windows, his athletic frame draped casually across a chair that might as well have had a crown attached to it. His Letterman jacket hung perfectly on his broad shoulders, the fabric still crisp despite being worn almost daily since football season began. Brandon had built his reputation on three pillars: athletic excellence, social dominance, and an uncanny ability to identify weakness in others. Jessica Rivera sat beside him, her manicured fingers dancing across her phone screen as she curated her Instagram story with the precision of a professional photographer. Her long blonde hair cascaded over one shoulder in waves that looked effortless, but had taken 45 minutes to achieve that morning. Jessica understood power in a way that impressed even Brandon. While he ruled through intimidation and physical presence, she controlled through social manipulation and the strategic deployment of humiliation. Her followers hung on every post, every story, every carefully crafted image of her perfect life. Connor Hayes bounced in his seat across from them, his restless energy barely contained as he scanned the cafeteria for entertainment. Connor served as Brandon's court jester, the one who could deliver cutting remarks with a smile and make cruelty seem like harmless fun. His sandy brown hair fell across his forehead in a way that made teachers trust him, even when they probably shouldn't. Connor had perfected the art of plausible deniability, always able to claim his actions were just jokes taken the wrong way. Madison Price perched nervously at the edge of their circle, her auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail that she constantly adjusted when she felt uncertain. Madison existed in a state of perpetual anxiety about her place in the group, always one misstep away from being cast out into the social wilderness. She laughed too loudly at Connor's jokes and agreed too quickly with Jessica's opinions, desperate to maintain her fragile position among the elite. Brandon's attention had been drawn to Tyler Chen from the moment the new student had walked through the doors of Riverside Falls High. There was something about Tyler's complete indifference to the social games that irritated Brandon in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Most new students either tried desperately to fit in or cowered in obvious fear of the established order. Tyler did neither. He moved through the hallways with quiet confidence, answered questions in class without seeking approval, and seemed genuinely uninterested in the drama that Brandon considered essential to high school life. More troubling to Brandon was Tyler's hair. That impossible, gravity-defying mess of black strands that stuck up in every direction represented everything Brandon couldn't control. Brandon's own hair was perfectly styled each morning with expensive products, cut every 3 weeks by the same barber his father used, and maintained with the kind of obsessive attention that spoke to deeper insecurities. Tyler's hair was chaos, and yet somehow it worked for him. Girls in their chemistry class had been caught staring at Tyler, not with mockery but with curiosity, and that was unacceptable. Jessica had noticed Tyler too, though for different reasons. She'd observed him during their shared study hall, watching how he helped Zoe Parker with her math homework without expecting anything in return. There was something genuine about Tyler that made Jessica uncomfortable, reminding her of who she used to be before she'd learned that kindness was often perceived as weakness. When Brandon mentioned Tyler during their weekend phone conversation, Jessica had immediately begun developing strategies for bringing him down to earth. Connor's interest in Tyler was more straightforward. The new kid represented fresh material, an untested target who might provide the kind of spectacular public humiliation that would cement Connor's reputation as the master of elaborate pranks. Connor had already begun observing Tyler's routines, noting that he always sat in the same spot during lunch and carried a backpack that seemed unusually heavy for someone who claimed to hate homework. The plan began forming during their Monday evening group chat. Brandon had casually mentioned that Tyler's ridiculous hair needed some serious adjustment, and Connor had immediately suggested something involving the cafeteria ceiling. Jessica had contributed the idea of making it a public spectacle, something that could be filmed and shared across social media platforms. Madison had nervously suggested they make sure no teachers were around, already worried about the potential consequences. Connor had spent Monday night researching different types of gum and their adhesive properties, approaching the task with the same intensity he brought to planning elaborate pranks. He'd discovered that certain sugar-free gums, when chewed for extended periods and mixed with specific techniques, could achieve industrial-strength stickiness. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Wait until Tyler was seated at his usual table, approach under the pretense of friendly conversation, and then use a combination of distraction and quick movements to embed multiple pieces of super sticky gum in his hair before pressing him upward until the gum made contact with the textured ceiling tiles. Brandon loved the plan because it combined public humiliation with the kind of physical dominance he craved. Tyler would be literally stuck, helpless, and exposed, while the entire cafeteria watched. Jessica appreciated the visual impact already, imagining how the footage would look on her social media accounts. Connor was excited about the technical challenge and the potential for the prank to become legendary. Madison was terrified but afraid to voice her concerns. Tuesday morning arrived with Connor carrying a pocket full of specially prepared gum. each piece chewed to optimal stickiness and stored in small plastic containers he'd borrowed from his mother's craft supplies. He'd practiced the technique on a mannequin head in his basement, perfecting the motion required to embed the gum and create maximum adhesion. The timing would be crucial. They needed Tyler seated and distracted, preferably during the busiest part of lunch when the maximum number of witnesses would be present. Jessica had positioned herself to capture the entire event on her phone, planning to edit the footage for maximum humiliation before posting it across multiple platforms. She'd already written the caption in her head, something about new students learning their place at Riverside Falls High. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Brandon had recruited 2 sophomore boys who owed him favors, positioning them nearby to ensure Tyler couldn't escape once the prank began. As Tyler entered the cafeteria that Tuesday afternoon, completely unaware of the conspiracy forming around him, Brandon felt the familiar rush of anticipation that came before establishing dominance over a new target. Tyler moved through the lunch line with his usual quiet confidence, his impossible hair catching the fluorescent lights as he selected his meal. He seemed so ordinary, so unsuspecting, which made what was about to happen feel almost anticlimactic. Connor cracked his knuckles and checked his pocket one final time, feeling the small containers of perfectly prepared gum. Jessica adjusted her phone's camera settings and found the ideal angle for filming. Madison fidgeted with her napkin, her stomach churning with anxiety about what they were planning to do. Brandon stood up slowly, his impressive height giving him a clear view of Tyler's location as the unsuspecting new student settled into his regular seat near the back corner of the cafeteria. The stage was set, the players were in position, and Chen was about to discover that Riverside Falls High had its own unique way of welcoming new students. The harassment began subtly, like a slow-building storm that Tyler initially mistook for random coincidence. During his 3rd week at Riverside Falls High, small annoyances started appearing in his daily routine with increasing frequency. His locker combination would mysteriously stop working, forcing him to track down the main office secretary who would reset it with a tired sigh. Books would disappear from his desk between classes, only to reappear in random locations throughout the school. His carefully organized chemistry notes vanished from his binder one morning, turning up later that day, scattered across the boys' bathroom floor. Tyler's natural inclination was to assume these incidents were accidents or oversights. Moving to a new school always came with adjustment challenges, and he experienced similar confusion during his first weeks in other environments. However, when he mentioned the pattern to Zoe Parker during their shared study period, her expression darkened with recognition and concern. Zoe had been observing the subtle campaign against Tyler with growing anxiety, recognizing the classic Brandon Walsh playbook from previous years. She'd watched Brandon's crew systematically isolate and torment other students who had somehow attracted their negative attention. The process always followed the same pattern: minor inconveniences that seemed random at first, followed by increasingly obvious harassment that built toward a spectacular public humiliation designed to cement the victim's position at the bottom of the social hierarchy. During chemistry class, Connor Hayes began positioning himself near Tyler's lab station, offering unsolicited help with experiments while accidentally contaminating Tyler's samples or knocking over his carefully measured solutions. Mrs. Rodriguez noticed the pattern after the 3rd ruined experiment in 2 days, but Connor's reputation as a harmless class clown provided perfect cover for his sabotage. When questioned, Connor would apologize profusely, claiming clumsiness and offering to help Tyler start over, which only created more opportunities for disruption. Jessica Rivera's contribution to the campaign was more psychologically sophisticated. She began a whisper campaign about Tyler's family circumstances, spreading rumors about why they'd really moved to Riverside Falls, According to Jessica's carefully crafted narrative, Tyler's father had been fired from his previous job for incompetence, forcing the family to relocate in shame. She suggested that Tyler's quiet demeanor wasn't confidence, but rather embarrassment about his family's reduced circumstances. The rumors spread through the school's social media networks with the viral efficiency that Jessica had perfected over years of practice. Madison Price participated reluctantly, her contributions limited to social exclusion rather than active harassment. When Tyler approached groups that included Madison, she would suddenly remember urgent business elsewhere or engage other members in conversations that pointedly excluded him. Her discomfort with the campaign was obvious to anyone paying close attention, but her fear of becoming Brandon's next target kept her compliant with the group's agenda. The escalation became impossible to ignore when Tyler discovered his bicycle tires slashed in the school parking lot after chemistry club on a Thursday afternoon. The cuts were precise and deliberate, clearly intended to strand him at school and force him to call his father for help. Tyler stared at the damage for several minutes, his analytical mind processing not just the immediate inconvenience, but the implications of targeted harassment. Someone was investing significant time and energy into making his life difficult, and the randomness he'd initially assumed was clearly anything but random. Walking home that evening, Tyler passed Brandon and Connor near the downtown pizza place, where students often gathered after school. Their conversation stopped abruptly when they noticed him, and Connor made an exaggerated comment about people who couldn't afford proper bike maintenance. Brandon laughed loudly enough to ensure Tyler heard every word, his voice carrying the kind of theatrical mockery designed for maximum public impact. Tyler kept walking without responding, but something fundamental shifted in his understanding of his situation at Riverside Falls High. The weekend provided temporary relief from the school-based harassment, but Tyler spent Saturday helping his father repair a complex adhesive failure at one of the industrial buildings downtown. A crucial ventilation system had been compromised when someone had attempted to seal ductwork using inappropriate materials, creating a dangerous situation that required immediate attention. Tyler watched his father methodically analyze the problem, identifying the specific chemical incompatibilities that had caused the adhesive failure and developing a multi-step solution that involved careful removal of the failed materials followed by proper resealing using compatible compounds. David Chen's approach to problem solving had always fascinated Tyler. His father never rushed to solutions, but instead invested time in understanding the root causes of failures. Every substance had predictable behaviors under specific conditions, and success came from working with those natural properties rather than fighting against them. As Tyler assisted with the complex repair, he found himself thinking about the harassment campaign at school in similar analytical terms. Monday morning brought a new level of harassment that left no doubt about its intentional nature. Tyler arrived at his locker to find it filled with shaving cream, the white foam cascading onto the floor when he opened the door. Other students gathered to watch his reaction, some laughing openly, while others looked uncomfortable with the obvious cruelty. Tyler calmly began removing his books from the mess, using tissues from his backpack to clean off the covers while maintaining his composure despite the public humiliation. Mrs. Rodriguez happened to witness the aftermath of the locker incident and immediately escorted Tyler to the main office to file a formal complaint. Principal Harris listened to Tyler's account with appropriate concern, promising to investigate and asking Tyler to document any future incidents. However, Tyler recognized the limitations of official intervention in the complex social dynamics of high school harassment. The administration could address obvious violations of school policy, but the subtle psychological warfare that Brandon's crew had perfected operated in gray areas that were difficult to prove and nearly impossible to punish. During lunch that Monday, the harassment became more overtly aggressive. Connor approached Tyler's table with theatrical friendliness, loudly welcoming him to Riverside Falls High while making comments about his hair that drew attention from nearby tables. When Tyler politely deflected Connor's mock compliments, Connor persisted, reaching out as if to touch Tyler's unruly black strands while making jokes about static electricity and bad grooming habits. Tyler leaned away from Connor's reaching hand, but the interaction had already achieved its purpose of creating a public spectacle. Jessica documented the entire exchange on her phone, later posting edited clips to her social media accounts with captions about new students who needed to learn proper hygiene. The footage spread quickly through the school's social networks, accompanied by comments and reactions that ranged from cruel laughter to uncomfortable silence. Tyler became aware of the viral nature of his humiliation when Zoe showed him posts during their shared study hall, her face flushed with anger on his behalf. The pattern of harassment intensified throughout the week, with incidents occurring daily and often multiple times per day. Tyler's backpack was accidentally knocked from his shoulders in crowded hallways, spilling his contents for everyone to see. His lunch was contaminated with salt when he stepped away from his table briefly. Anonymous notes appeared in his textbooks, featuring crude drawings and suggestions about hair management products. By Friday afternoon, Tyler had documented 12 separate incidents of targeted harassment, each one individually minor but collectively forming a clear pattern of systematic bullying. The campaign was wearing him down mentally and emotionally, but more importantly, it was beginning to interfere with his academic performance and his ability to form normal social connections with other students. Standing in the parking lot after school on Friday, Tyler made a decision that would fundamentally alter the trajectory of his experience at Riverside Falls High. He was done being a passive victim of Brandon Walsh's power games. The analytical skills and problem-solving abilities he'd learned from his father were about to be applied to a very different kind of sticky situation. Tuesday's lunch period at Riverside Falls High buzzed with the usual energy of 500 teenagers navigating social hierarchies over cafeteria, pizza, and chocolate milk. Tyler Chen sat at his customary table near the back corner, methodically working through his sandwich while reviewing chemistry notes for an upcoming quiz. His distinctive black hair caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows, each unruly strand seeming to defy gravity in its own unique direction. He had grown comfortable with this quiet corner of the cafeteria, a space where he could eat in peace while observing the complex social dynamics that governed his new school. Zoe Parker had joined him 20 minutes earlier, spreading her own homework across the table while sharing quiet commentary about their English teacher's tendency to assign impossible reading schedules. Their friendship had developed naturally over shared academic interests and mutual appreciation for intelligent conversation. Zoe's presence provided Tyler with a sense of normalcy in an environment that had become increasingly hostile over the with a sense of normalcy in an environment that had become increasingly hostile over the past several weeks. Brandon Walsh rose from his premium table near the windows with the calculated confidence of someone who had never questioned his right to command attention. His impressive height and athletic build made him impossible to ignore as he moved through the cafeteria, other students instinctively creating space for his passage. Brandon's perfectly styled hair and expensive clothing marked him as someone who understood the power of appearance, and his easy smile masked the predatory intelligence that had made him the undisputed ruler of Riverside Falls High's social ecosystem. Connor Hayes followed Brandon's lead, his movements bouncing with barely contained excitement as he fingered the small plastic containers in his jacket pocket. Each container held carefully prepared bubble gum that had been chewed to optimal stickiness and conditioned for maximum adhesive properties. Connor had spent considerable time perfecting his technique, practicing on various surfaces until he could achieve industrial strength adhesion within seconds of contact. His research had revealed that certain sugar-free gums, when properly prepared and applied with specific pressure patterns, could create bonds that rivaled commercial adhesives. Jessica Rivera positioned herself strategically near Tyler's table, her phone already configured for optimal video recording. She had practiced the angles and lighting throughout the previous week, ensuring that she could capture the entire incident with cinematic quality. Jessica understood the viral potential of public humiliation, and she intended to document Brandon's latest power play with the professional competence that had made her social media presence legendary among Riverside Falls students. Madison Price trailed behind the group with obvious reluctance, her stomach churning with anxiety about what they were planning to execute. She had tried multiple times to suggest alternative approaches to dealing with Tyler, but her suggestions had been dismissed with the kind of casual cruelty that reminded her why she lived in constant fear of becoming their next target. Madison's participation was motivated entirely by self-preservation, though the guilt was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Tyler noticed the approaching group with mild curiosity rather than alarm. Brandon's crew occasionally moved through different sections of the cafeteria, usually seeking entertainment or asserting dominance over younger students. Tyler assumed their trajectory toward his table was coincidental, perhaps aimed at someone seated nearby. He continued reviewing his chemistry notes while Zoe gathered her materials, preparing to leave for her next class. Brandon's approach was masterfully executed, his demeanor suggesting casual friendliness rather than predatory intent. He slid into the empty chair across from Tyler with the easy confidence of someone initiating a pleasant conversation between equals. His smile appeared genuine, his voice warm and welcoming as he introduced himself with theatrical politeness. Connor positioned himself behind Tyler's chair, ostensibly leaning against the wall while actually preparing for precise tactical positioning. The conversation began innocuously enough, with Brandon asking about Tyler's adjustment to Riverside Falls High and expressing interest in his academic performance. Tyler responded politely but guardedly, sensing undercurrents of tension that his analytical mind couldn't quite identify. Zoe had frozen in place, recognizing the danger signals that Tyler was still learning to interpret. Her wide eyes darted between Brandon's false smile and Connor's suspicious positioning, but she felt powerless to intervene without making the situation worse. Brandon's questions gradually became more personal and invasive, focusing particularly on Tyler's family circumstances and his distinctive appearance. The conversation took on an interrogative quality that made Tyler increasingly uncomfortable. Though Brandon maintained his facade of friendly curiosity throughout the exchange, Connor contributed occasional comments designed to keep Tyler's attention focused forward while he maneuvered into optimal position for the attack they had planned. Jessica began recording discreetly, her phone angled to capture Tyler's face and hair while maintaining the appearance of casual social media browsing. She had perfected this technique over months of documenting various incidents for later use in her carefully orchestrated harassment campaigns. The cafeteria's noise level provided perfect cover for her activities, and other students were too focused on their own conversations to notice her preparations. The moment of attack arrived without warning or fanfare. Connor's hands moved with practiced precision, his fingers working multiple pieces of super sticky gum into Tyler's hair with surgical accuracy. The gum adhered instantly to Tyler's thick black strands, its carefully prepared consistency allowing Connor to create multiple anchor points within seconds. Tyler felt the invasion but couldn't immediately comprehend what was happening, his mind struggling to process the unexpected physical assault. Brandon's role shifted seamlessly from friendly conversationalist to physical restraint specialist, his powerful hands gripping Tyler's shoulders and pressing upward with relentless force. Tyler found himself rising involuntarily from his chair, his hair being guided toward the textured ceiling tiles that Brandon had identified as optimal adhesion surfaces. The gum made contact with the ceiling with a wet, decisive sound that seemed to echo throughout the suddenly silent cafeteria. The adhesion was immediate and absolute. Tyler's hair, weighted down by strategically placed gum, stuck to the ceiling tiles with the kind of industrial strength bond that Connor had spent days perfecting. Tyler's feet barely maintained contact with the floor, his body suspended in an impossibly humiliating position that left him completely helpless and exposed. The carefully prepared gum had created multiple attachment points that distributed his weight across several ceiling tiles, ensuring that any struggle would only tighten the bonds. The cafeteria erupted in a mixture of shocked gasps, cruel laughter, and uncomfortable silence as 500 students processed the spectacular public humiliation they were witnessing. Jessica's phone captured every detail with professional clarity, her steady hands ensuring that the footage would be suitable for maximum viral distribution. Some students pulled out their own phones, recognizing the historic nature of what they were seeing, while others looked away in embarrassment or disgust. Tyler's initial shock gave way to a complex mixture of emotions that he struggled to process while suspended in his degrading position. The physical discomfort was significant, with his scalp bearing the full weight of his body through the gum's adhesive properties. More devastating was the complete loss of dignity and autonomy, the transformation from respected new student to helpless victim in front of the entire school community. Zoe stood frozen in horror, her mind racing through possible interventions while recognizing her own powerlessness against Brandon's physical dominance. Other students began gathering around the spectacle, their reactions ranging from cruel entertainment to uncomfortable sympathy. Teachers were notably absent from the cafeteria during the lunch period, leaving the student population to self-regulate an incident that clearly exceeded normal boundaries of acceptable behavior. Brandon stepped back to admire his handiwork, his satisfaction evident as he surveyed Tyler's helpless condition. Connor bounced excitedly nearby, proud of his technical achievement and eager for recognition of his innovative approach to public humiliation. Jessica continued documenting from multiple angles, already planning her social media strategy for maximum impact and viral potential. Madison stood apart from the group, her face pale with revulsion at what they had accomplished. She had participated reluctantly in previous harassment campaigns, but this level of public degradation exceeded her comfort zone significantly. The sight of Tyler suspended helplessly from the ceiling triggered guilt and shame that she struggled to suppress, though. Her fear of Brandon's retaliation kept her silent. Tyler's suspended position provided him with an unusual perspective on the cafeteria's social dynamics, allowing him to observe reactions and behaviors that would inform his future understanding of Riverside Falls High's power structures. Despite his physical discomfort and emotional humiliation, his analytical mind continued functioning, processing information that would prove crucial in the weeks ahead. The incident concluded only when Mrs. Rodriguez arrived in response to student reports, her shocked expression giving way to professional competence as she immediately began coordinating Tyler's rescue and documenting the obvious assault that had occurred in her school's cafeteria. Mrs. Rodriguez's arrival in the cafeteria marked the beginning of Tyler's liberation from his humiliating suspension, though the process would prove far more complex than anyone initially anticipated. The chemistry teacher took one look at Tyler's predicament and immediately recognized that this wasn't a simple prank that could be resolved with a pair of scissors and some gentle tugging. The industrial strength adhesion that Connor had achieved through his careful preparation meant that any hasty removal attempts could result in serious injury to Tyler's scalp or neck. The first challenge Mrs. Rodriguez faced was safely supporting Tyler's weight while she assessed the situation. She quickly enlisted the help of Marcus Johnson, the student council president who had witnessed the attack, and together they positioned chairs beneath Tyler to reduce the strain on his hair and neck. Tyler's feet found purchase on the improvised support system, allowing him to shift some of his weight away from the ceiling-bound gum that had turned his distinctive hair into an unwilling anchor. Mrs. Rodriguez's scientific background proved invaluable as she examined the adhesive bonds that Connor had created. She could see immediately that the gum had been specially prepared, its consistency and application pattern suggesting deliberate planning rather than spontaneous mischief. The multiple attachment points distributed across several ceiling tiles indicated sophisticated understanding of weight distribution and adhesive properties. This wasn't amateur hour pranking. This was calculated assault using chemical knowledge that impressed and horrified her in equal measure. Tyler's emotional state during these initial moments was a complex mixture of humiliation, anger, and analytical fascination. Despite his degrading position, he found himself studying Mrs. Rodriguez's assessment process and recognizing the scientific principles she was applying to understand his predicament. The transformation in Tyler's social status at Riverside Falls High was immediate and comprehensive. Students who had previously ignored or dismissed him now approached with respectful curiosity about his background and capabilities. His damaged hair became a symbol of his resilience rather than his victimization, while his quiet confidence attracted positive attention from classmates who appreciated his refusal to be intimidated by traditional bullying tactics. Brandon Walsh's crew underwent their own transformation in the wake of Tyler's demonstration, though their evolution was far less positive than his own. Connor's confidence in his technical abilities was permanently shattered by Tyler's superior demonstration, while his recognition of Tyler's advanced knowledge left him reluctant to attempt any future pranking activities. Brandon's dominance over the school's social hierarchy was fundamentally challenged by his helpless condition during the cafeteria incident, creating opportunities for other students to question his authority and influence. Jessica Rivera's social media presence suffered significant damage as her documentation of Tyler's humiliation transformed into evidence of her own crew's incompetence and cruelty. The viral spread of footage showing Connor and Brandon's entrapment created narratives that painted her group as amateur bullies who had encountered a superior opponent. Her attempts to control the story through selective editing and commentary proved futile against the comprehensive nature of Tyler's victory. Madison Price's guilt over her participation in Tyler's original humiliation was compounded by terror of potential retaliation for her role in the ceiling incident. Her attempts to apologize to Tyler were met with polite acknowledgement, but no forgiveness, leaving her in a state of constant anxiety about when and how he might choose to address her contributions to his ordeal. The uncertainty of her situation proved more psychologically damaging than any direct confrontation might have been. Tyler's family celebrated his triumph with pride that was mixed with concern about the implications of his demonstrated capabilities. David Chen recognized that his son had absorbed their technical discussions and applied them with sophistication that exceeded his own expectations, while Emma's admiration for Tyler's victory was tempered by worry about potential consequences. Their support remained unwavering, though they understood that Tyler's actions had permanently altered his position within the school's social ecosystem. The weeks following Tyler's cafeteria demonstration brought continued evidence of his transformed status within Riverside Falls High's community. His chemistry performance impressed Mrs. Rodriguez to the point where she began providing him with advanced materials and independent study opportunities that challenged his remarkable abilities. His quiet leadership in group projects revealed organizational skills and technical knowledge that made him a sought-after partner for academic collaborations. Zoe Parker's friendship with Tyler deepened as she witnessed his evolution from victim to respected peer, though she remained somewhat intimidated by the capabilities he had revealed during his confrontation with Brandon's crew. Their shared study sessions became opportunities for Tyler to demonstrate knowledge that went far beyond typical high school curriculum, while his willingness to help her with difficult concepts established him as a valuable mentor and ally. The broader student body's relationship with Tyler evolved from indifference or sympathy to recognition and respect, though some students remained wary of someone who had demonstrated such sophisticated retaliation capabilities. His reputation as a sticky situation specialist became a source of both admiration and caution, with students seeking his help for various technical problems, while carefully avoiding any actions that might provoke his attention in negative ways. Brandon Walsh's attempts to rebuild his damaged reputation proved largely unsuccessful, as students recognized that his encounter with Tyler had revealed fundamental limitations in his understanding and capabilities. His physical dominance remained unchallenged, but his intellectual authority was permanently compromised by Tyler's superior demonstration of strategic thinking and technical knowledge. The social hierarchy that had placed Brandon at its apex was restructured around new recognition of different types of power and influence. Tyler's journey from victimized new student to respected peer demonstrated the transformative power of knowledge, preparation, and strategic thinking in overcoming apparently hopeless situations. His refusal to accept the role of helpless victim, combined with his access to specialized skills and his willingness to apply them decisively, had permanently altered the social dynamics of Riverside Falls High, while establishing his position as someone who could not be safely ignored or dismissed. The legacy of Tyler's ceiling incident and cafeteria demonstration became part of Riverside Falls High's folklore, serving as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating quiet students with distinctive appearances and unknown capabilities. His story inspired other victims of bullying to seek knowledge and support rather than accepting powerless positions, while warning potential tormentors that their targets might possess resources and skills that could transform victims into formidable opponents. Tyler's reputation as a sticky situation specialist extended beyond his school environment, as word of his remarkable capabilities spread through the broader community. Local businesses began seeking his consultation on adhesive problems that had stumped their regular maintenance crews, while his father's reputation was enhanced by association with Tyler's demonstrated expertise. The skills that had been developed through family collaboration and personal study were creating opportunities that neither Tyler nor his father had previously anticipated. The friendship networks that developed around Tyler reflected his evolved status within the school's social ecosystem, with students seeking association with someone who had demonstrated both technical competence and moral courage. His willingness to help others with genuine problems, combined with his obvious capability for defending himself against harassment, made him an attractive ally for students who had previously felt vulnerable to predatory behavior from more aggressive peers. Mrs. Rodriguez's recognition of Tyler's exceptional abilities led to recommendations for advanced placement opportunities and potential college scholarships that could accelerate his academic progress significantly. Her advocacy with the school administration emphasized Tyler's unique combination of theoretical knowledge and practical application skills, positioning him for opportunities that reflected his remarkable capabilities rather than his conventional academic record. The chemical formulations that Tyler had developed for his cafeteria demonstration represented intellectual property with potential commercial applications, though his focus remained on educational rather than entrepreneurial pursuits. His notebook contained innovations in adhesive technology that could attract attention from industrial research facilities, while his problem-solving methodologies demonstrated thinking patterns that suggested exceptional potential for scientific research and development careers. Tyler's transformation from victim to victor served as inspiration for his younger sister Emma, who began developing her own technical interests under his guidance and encouragement. Their collaboration on various projects strengthened their sibling relationship while providing Emma with role models for handling future challenges through knowledge and preparation rather than conventional responses. The family dynamic evolved to support both children's technical interests, while maintaining emphasis on ethical application of their developing capabilities. The documentation of Tyler's journey through social media and student testimony created a comprehensive record of his evolution from targeted new student to respected peer, providing a case study in effective response to systematic harassment. His strategic approach to conflict resolution demonstrated alternatives to traditional administrative interventions, while showcasing the power of specialized knowledge in overcoming apparent disadvantages. Tyler's story concluded with his establishment as a permanent and respected member of Riverside Falls High's community. His reputation as a sticky situation specialist, serving both as protection against future harassment and as foundation for positive relationships with peers who appreciated his unique capabilities. The ceiling incident that had been intended to destroy his social standing had instead catalyzed his transformation into someone who commanded respect through demonstrated competence rather than demanded it through intimidation or violence. The lessons learned from Tyler's experience resonated throughout Riverside Falls High's student body, creating awareness that targets of harassment might possess unexpected resources and capabilities that could transform victim-predator relationships in surprising ways. His success in overcoming systematic bullying through knowledge, preparation, and strategic application of technical skills provided hope for other students facing similar challenges, while serving as warning to potential aggressors about the risks of underestimating their intended victims. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. His father's training had given him extensive knowledge about adhesive failures and removal techniques, and he began mentally cataloging potential solutions, even as he endured the stares and whispers of his fellow students. The cafeteria gradually emptied as lunch period ended, and students reluctantly departed for their afternoon classes. Many lingered as long as possible, reluctant to miss any developments in what was already being recognized as the most spectacular public humiliation in Riverside Falls High history. Jessica's footage was already circulating through social media networks, ensuring that Tyler's ordeal would be documented and shared far beyond the school's immediate community. Principal Harris arrived within minutes of being summoned, his usual composed demeanor cracking as he processed the unprecedented situation unfolding in his cafeteria. He had dealt with countless incidents of student misbehavior during his administrative career, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of a student literally cemented to his ceiling by what appeared to be weaponized bubble gum. His immediate concerns focused on Tyler's physical safety and the potential legal ramifications of what clearly constituted criminal assault. The principal's first instinct was to call emergency services, but Mrs. Rodriguez convinced him to allow her to attempt a scientific solution before involving paramedics, who might approach the problem with brute force rather than chemical understanding. She dispatched Marcus Johnson to her classroom to retrieve specific supplies while she continued her assessment of the adhesive bonds. Tyler appreciated her methodical approach, recognizing her respect for the complexity of his situation. Brandon Walsh and his crew had initially retreated to observe their handiwork from a safe distance, their satisfaction evident as they watched Tyler's humiliation unfold according to their plan. However, Principal Harris's arrival and the obvious seriousness of the situation began to penetrate their celebration. Connor's pride in his technical achievement started giving way to anxiety about potential consequences, while Jessica realized that her carefully documented footage might serve as evidence rather than entertainment. Madison Price had already fled the cafeteria entirely, her guilt and horror overwhelming her ability to witness the aftermath of their attack. She spent the remainder of lunch period in a bathroom stall, crying and wrestling with her complicity in something that had clearly crossed lines she hadn't recognized existed. Her fear of Brandon's retaliation warred with her growing recognition that their actions had moved beyond acceptable harassment into territory that could result in serious consequences for everyone involved. Mrs. Rodriguez's classroom supplies included several solvents and compounds that she had accumulated for various chemistry demonstrations throughout her teaching career. She returned to the cafeteria carrying a collection of bottles and applicators, her mind racing through potential approaches to dissolving Connor's carefully engineered adhesive bonds. Tyler watched her preparations with growing hope, recognizing several substances that his father had taught him about during their various repair projects. The removal process began with careful application of citrus-based solvents designed to break down the molecular bonds that were anchoring Tyler's hair to the ceiling tiles. Mrs. Rodriguez worked with surgical precision, applying small amounts of solvent to specific attachment points while monitoring Tyler's comfort and safety. The chemical reaction was immediate but gradual, with the gum slowly releasing its grip on both hair and ceiling as the solvent penetrated its structure. Tyler's relief was profound as he felt the first attachment points beginning to loosen. Though the process remained slow and methodical, Mrs. Rodriguez refused to rush despite the gathered crowd of administrators and remaining students, understanding that hasty action could still result in injury or permanent damage to Tyler's scalp. Her patient approach demonstrated the same scientific rigor that Tyler admired in his father's work, and he found himself genuinely grateful for her expertise. Principal Harris used the extended removal process to begin documenting the incident and gathering witness statements from students who had observed the attack. The testimony was consistent and damning, with multiple witnesses describing Brandon's restraint of Tyler while Connor applied the prepared gum. Jessica's own footage provided additional evidence that made denial impossible, though she seemed unaware that her documentation efforts had created a comprehensive record of criminal assault. The emotional impact of the incident began to settle on Tyler as Mrs. Rodriguez worked to free him from his humiliating suspension. The violation he felt was comprehensive, affecting not just his physical dignity, but his sense of safety and belonging within the school community. The calculated nature of the attack made it clear that Brandon's crew had invested significant time and planning into his humiliation, transforming him from a person into a target for their entertainment. Tyler's analytical mind processed the attack's methodology even as he endured its consequences. Connor's preparation had been sophisticated, demonstrating understanding of adhesive chemistry that rivaled many adults. The strategic positioning and timing had been flawless, suggesting careful observation of Tyler's routines and habits. Jessica's documentation had been professional in its execution, indicating experience with viral content creation. The entire operation had been conducted with military precision that was both impressive and terrifying. As the final attachment points dissolved under Mrs. Rodriguez's careful ministrations, Tyler felt his feet settle firmly on the supporting chairs, his hair finally free from its ceiling-bound prison. The relief was immediate and overwhelming, though significant quantities of gum remained embedded in his hair, requiring additional work to remove completely. Mrs. Rodriguez continued her patient chemical treatment, gradually dissolving the remaining adhesive residue while protecting Tyler's scalp from irritation. The aftermath of Tyler's liberation revealed the full extent of the damage to his distinctive hair. Large sections were matted with gum residue, while other areas had been stretched and distorted by the suspension process. The overall effect was devastating to Tyler's appearance, transforming his trademark, unruly style into something that looked genuinely damaged and unkempt. Mrs. Rodriguez assured him that the remaining gum could be removed with additional chemical treatment, but the immediate impact was psychologically devastating. Principal Harris had completed his preliminary investigation and was preparing to involve law enforcement when Tyler made a request that surprised everyone present. Rather than pressing for immediate arrests or punishment, Tyler asked for permission to address the situation himself, using knowledge and skills that he claimed could resolve the matter more effectively than traditional disciplinary measures. His calm demeanor and articulate explanation impressed the principal, who agreed to allow Tyler 24 hours before involving external authorities. Tyler's request for autonomy in handling his situation reflected a fundamental shift in his approach to the harassment he had been enduring. The ceiling incident had served as a catalyzing moment, transforming him from a passive victim into someone prepared to take active control of the circumstances. The violation he had experienced was too comprehensive to ignore or forgive, but his response would be measured, strategic, and devastatingly effective. The walk home from school that afternoon was unlike any Tyler had previously experienced at Riverside Falls High. His damaged hair drew stares and whispers from every student he encountered, transforming him into a walking reminder of Brandon's power and reach. However, Tyler's demeanor had changed fundamentally since his liberation from the cafeteria ceiling. Where previously he had moved through the hallways with quiet confidence, he now carried himself with purpose that suggested dangerous potential. Chen was waiting at home when Tyler arrived, her shock at his appearance quickly giving way to concern and anger as he explained what had happened. His younger sister had always been protective despite their age difference, and her fury at Tyler's treatment was immediate and comprehensive. Emma's suggestions for retaliation were creative but ultimately impractical, though Tyler appreciated her loyalty and support during his moment of crisis. Chen's reaction to Tyler's ordeal was more complex and ultimately more useful to Tyler's evolving plans. His father's initial anger at the assault on his son gradually transformed into professional curiosity about the adhesive techniques that had been employed against Tyler. David examined the remaining gum residue with the same analytical approach he brought to industrial repair problems, his admiration for Connor's technical skill mixed with disgust at its malicious application. The evening conversation between Tyler and his father proved pivotal in shaping Tyler's response strategy. David shared advanced techniques for adhesive manipulation that he had learned during his years in industrial maintenance, explaining molecular-level interactions that could be exploited for both bonding and separation purposes. Tyler absorbed this information with the intensity of someone preparing for war, understanding that knowledge would be his primary weapon in the conflict ahead. Tyler's notebook became a planning document as he worked late into the night, developing a comprehensive response strategy that would address not just Brandon's crew but the broader social dynamics that had enabled his humiliation. His approach would be scientific rather than emotional, methodical rather than impulsive, and ultimately far more devastating than anything Brandon could have anticipated. The ceiling incident had awakened capabilities in Tyler that even he hadn't fully recognized, and Riverside Falls High was about to discover why attacking a sticky situation specialist was a catastrophic mistake. Sleep came fitfully for Tyler that night, his dreams filled with images of chemical reactions and molecular bonds, his subconscious mind working through problems and solutions that would soon reshape the social landscape of his school. When he woke Wednesday morning, Chen was no longer the quiet new student who had walked through the doors of Riverside Falls High 3 weeks earlier. He was someone entirely different, someone who understood that respect must sometimes be claimed rather than earned, and someone who possessed the knowledge and determination necessary to claim it decisively. The transformation was visible immediately in Tyler's posture and demeanor as he prepared for school Wednesday morning. His damaged hair remained a stark reminder of his humiliation, but his movements carried confidence that suggested imminent action rather than continued victimization. Emma noticed the change during breakfast, commenting that Tyler seemed different in ways she couldn't quite articulate. David recognized the shift as well, seeing in his son the same focused determination that had driven his own success in solving impossible repair problems. Tyler's backpack that morning contained items that hadn't been there the previous day, carefully selected compounds and tools that his father had helped him prepare during their late-night planning session. Each item served a specific purpose in Tyler's developing strategy, and together they represented capabilities that Brandon's crew couldn't possibly anticipate. Tyler understood that his response needed to be proportional to the attack he had suffered, comprehensive in its scope, and impossible to ignore or dismiss. The hallways of Riverside Falls High buzzed with conversation about Tyler's ordeal, students sharing details and speculation about the ceiling incident with the enthusiasm typically reserved for major scandals. Tyler moved through these discussions without comment, his silence interpreted by some as continued humiliation, but recognized by others as something more ominous. Zoe Parker fell into step beside him during the walk to first period, her concern evident as she studied his transformed demeanor. Mrs. Rodriguez's chemistry class provided Tyler with his first opportunity to demonstrate his evolved capabilities. When she assigned a complex experiment involving adhesive properties and molecular bonding, Tyler's performance exceeded anything she had previously observed from any student. His understanding of the underlying principles was sophisticated beyond his years, and his practical application of theoretical knowledge suggested extensive hands-on experience that went far beyond typical high school chemistry education. Brandon Walsh's crew maintained their usual positions during lunch period, their satisfaction with Tyler's humiliation evident in their casual discussion of the previous day's events. Connor basked in recognition of his technical achievement, while Jessica shared statistics about the viral reach of her documentation efforts. Brandon himself seemed pleased with the successful assertion of his dominance, treating Tyler's defeat as confirmation of his own superior position within the school's social hierarchy. Tyler entered the cafeteria with calm deliberation, his damaged hair immediately drawing attention and whispered commentary from students throughout the space. However, his demeanor suggested someone approaching a planned appointment rather than someone dreading another encounter with his tormentors. He selected his lunch with careful consideration, choosing items that would complement rather than interfere with the activities he had planned for the period ahead. The confrontation began when Tyler approached Brandon's table with steady confidence, his movement through the cafeteria drawing attention from students who recognized the potential for another spectacular incident. Brandon looked up with amused interest, expecting continued evidence of Tyler's defeated status and perhaps an opportunity for additional humiliation. Connor's excitement was visible as he anticipated another chance to demonstrate his innovative approach to public degradation. Tyler's opening statement was simple and direct, delivered with calm authority that immediately captured the attention of everyone within hearing range. He thanked Brandon's crew for their educational demonstration of adhesive applications, explaining that their technique had inspired him to explore more advanced approaches to sticky situation management. His tone suggested genuine appreciation rather than sarcasm, confusing his audience and preventing immediate dismissal of his comments. Connor responded with characteristic enthusiasm, eager to discuss the technical aspects of his ceiling attachment method with someone who seemed to appreciate its sophistication. Tyler encouraged this discussion, asking detailed questions about preparation techniques and application strategies that revealed his own substantial knowledge of adhesive chemistry. The conversation quickly evolved beyond Connor's understanding, as Tyler introduced concepts and terminology that demonstrated expertise far exceeding anything Connor had achieved through his amateur experimentation. Brandon's initial amusement gradually shifted to confusion as Tyler's technical discussion revealed knowledge that seemed impossible for a high school student to possess. Tyler's questions exposed gaps in Connor's understanding while demonstrating his own comprehensive grasp of molecular-level interactions that governed adhesive behavior. The dynamic of the conversation was shifting in ways that made Brandon uncomfortable, though he couldn't yet identify the specific source of his unease. Jessica continued documenting the interaction on her phone, expecting Tyler's approach to provide additional content for her social media campaigns. However, Tyler's calm competence was creating footage that contradicted her preferred narrative of his continued victimization. The quiet confidence he displayed was transforming him from a defeated target into something that resembled a predator studying its prey, though Jessica didn't yet recognize the implications of this transformation. Tyler's transition from questioner to demonstrator came without warning or fanfare. He produced a small container from his backpack, explaining that he had prepared a superior adhesive compound that addressed the limitations he had identified in Connor's approach. The substance appeared innocuous enough, resembling common craft supplies that many students carried for various projects. Tyler's casual handling of the material suggested routine familiarity rather than dangerous experimentation. The demonstration began with Tyler applying his prepared compound to Connor's hand during their continued technical discussion, ostensibly showing proper application technique for optimal adhesion. Connor was initially pleased to serve as a willing test subject, eager to learn advanced methods that could enhance his own pranking capabilities. However, Tyler's compound began working immediately upon contact, creating molecular bonds that exceeded anything Connor had previously experienced. Connor's hand adhered to the cafeteria table with instantaneous and absolute finality, the specially designed compound creating bonds that were chemically superior to industrial adhesives. Tyler had spent considerable time developing this particular formulation, incorporating knowledge that his father had shared about advanced bonding agents used in critical industrial applications. The result was adhesion that could only be reversed through specific chemical processes that Connor couldn't possibly know or access. Brandon's attempts to help Connor proved futile and increasingly embarrassing as Connor's panic became evident to the gathering crowd of students. Every pulling motion only served to demonstrate the absolute nature of Tyler's adhesive achievement, while Connor's growing distrust provided stark contrast to Tyler's calm competence. The dynamic that had existed between victim and tormentor was reversing with chemical precision that left no room for denial or rationalization. Tyler's explanation of Connor's predicament was delivered with the same educational tone Connor had used to describe his sealing attachment technique. He detailed the molecular-level reactions that were occurring between Connor's skin and the table surface, explaining why traditional removal methods would be ineffective and potentially dangerous. His scientific presentation transformed Connor's humiliation into a teachable moment that demonstrated Tyler's vastly superior knowledge and capabilities. Jessica's documentation efforts captured every detail of Connor's entrapment, though the footage was now serving purposes she hadn't intended. Instead of recording Tyler's continued victimization, she was creating evidence of his remarkable capabilities and strategic thinking. The viral potential of Connor's predicament was immediately obvious, though the implications for her own social media presence were becoming increasingly problematic. Madison Price had watched Tyler's demonstration with growing horror, recognizing that Brandon's crew had fundamentally underestimated their target's capabilities and willingness to retaliate. Tyler's calm execution of Connor's entrapment suggested planning and preparation that exceeded anything their group had achieved, while his obvious expertise indicated access to knowledge and resources that could threaten all of them. Her fear of Brandon's retaliation was being rapidly replaced by terror of what Tyler might do next. Brandon's attempted intervention proved both futile and educational, as Tyler calmly explained the chemical principles that made Connor's release impossible through conventional means. Tyler's suggestion that Brandon attempt to free his friend resulted in Brandon's own hand becoming adhered to Connor's arm, effectively doubling the scope of the demonstration while showcasing Tyler's ability to anticipate and counter aggressive responses. The precision of Tyler's trap revealed strategic thinking that Brandon had never encountered in their previous encounters. The gathering crowd of students witnessed a complete reversal of the power dynamic that had governed Tyler's experience at Riverside Falls High, where previously he had been the helpless victim of calculated humiliation. He now controlled the situation with scientific authority that rendered his tormentors powerless. Connor's panic and Brandon's frustrated anger provided stark evidence of their new positions within the social hierarchy, while Tyler's calm competence established his credentials as someone not to be underestimated. Mrs. Rodriguez's arrival in the cafeteria was prompted by reports of another incident involving Tyler, though she quickly recognized that the situation had evolved far beyond her initial expectations. Her assessment of Connor and Brandon's predicament revealed adhesive work that impressed her professional understanding while demonstrating Tyler's remarkable grasp of advanced chemistry principles. Her conversation with Tyler about potential solutions confirmed her growing recognition of his exceptional capabilities. The liberation process that Mrs. Rodriguez initiated with Tyler's guidance required sophisticated chemical knowledge and careful application of specialized solvents that were only available in her advanced chemistry laboratory. The complexity of the removal procedure demonstrated the sophistication of Tyler's adhesive formulation while providing additional evidence of his technical expertise. Connor and Brandon's release required nearly 2 hours of careful chemical treatment, during which time their helpless condition was observed by most of the school's student body. Tyler's final statement to Brandon's crew was delivered with quiet authority that left no doubt about the transformation that had occurred in their relationship. He explained that his demonstration had been educational rather than punitive, designed to illustrate proper adhesive technique while establishing his credentials as someone who understood sticky situations far better than amateur practitioners. His offer to provide additional lessons was extended with polite professionalism that made refusal seem both impossible and inadvisable. The aftermath of Tyler's demonstration rippled through Riverside Falls High with the speed and intensity of a social media earthquake. Jessica's footage of Connor and Brandon's entrapment provided irrefutable evidence of Tyler's capabilities, while student witnesses shared details of his calm competence during the incident. The narrative of Tyler as a helpless victim was permanently replaced by recognition of him as someone with dangerous knowledge and the willingness to use it when provoked. Principal Harris's investigation of the cafeteria incident revealed the sophisticated nature of Tyler's response, while confirming the calculated cruelty of the original attack that had provoked it. Tyler's cooperation with the administrative review process demonstrated his respect for proper authority while establishing his actions as defensive rather than aggressive. The principal's decision to treat the matter as a resolved conflict rather than ongoing disciplinary issue reflected his recognition of Tyler's measured and proportional response.